Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Sushil Madhukar. I'm Chief Principal, Customer Success Program at TechDemocracy. I'm based here in Toronto, and I welcome you for our one of the session here, automation of IEM, Identity Access Management. This is not new. Now it's the word at everybody where everybody is talking about, because you must be seeing out of every alternate breaches which is happening, identity access management is related somewhere. And to discuss more, we have a distinguished panel. We have one person who is not required introduction, but he needs to introduce himself. Marco, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you. I'm Marco Lattavo. Thanks. I head up the identity and access management practice for Definity Financial Services. Definity went public last November. Prior to that, it was Economical Insurance. Definity is actually made up of Economical, Sonnet, Petline, and Family Insurance. I've been in cyber for over 20 years and in identity for at least 12, and I've done many things before that. And it's kind of me. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. And we are going to use this time to listen a lot how the end clients are going to use IDM and taking IDM very seriously for maturing their cybersecurity. Another person we have is, hey, Susan.
Hello.
Why don't you introduce yourself?
Of course. So I'm Sue Melvin. I am a cloud endpoint technical specialist for Microsoft Canada. I have 17 years industry experience as a customer, working in large industry and healthcare. Over the years, I've been there, done that. Identity has really been one of my passions over the last, I would probably say, 8 to 10 years. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you. Thanks for being part of the panel, Susan. And we are just taking this discussion forward. So now we know that identity access management, it's being a journey for the organization, starting from in-person, manual, and now a lot of discussion around zero trust. Identity access management, if I remember, always being part of the engineering, if I will recall, until last 4 to 5 years, right? I mean, it's not a part of the cybersecurity or under CISOs if we don't talk about identity governance, because it was called as IEM engineering. But if you will see the last few years, 3 to 4 years, the dynamics changes, the landscape changes, and if you will see the breaches, hackings, either it's associated with the privilege accounts or the third-party user accounts. I mean, lot of chaos, and now we are seeing that each organizations are putting IEM as a priority, and they are taking under the CISO organization. One way or another, CISO is getting responsible within that. And IEM as a forefront, it's a sub-organization led by either one of the lead who is a VP director within the organization, right? Marco, and since you are leading in economical insurance, how is IEM automation becoming key in the cybersecurity landscape for any of the organization, right? If you can just help to understand our audience today, that will be really helpful.
Sure. So I look at there's basically three factors that make it a priority, and just in general, if I think of IAM, and one of them is basically cost. Identities are growing exponentially, whether they're machine-based identities, whether they're human identities, whether it's cloud identities, enterprise, cloud, business, whatever that happens to be. And to actually manage that manually today requires a lot of people. Cost will skyrocket, whether it's identity, authentication, authorization, those things. There's one of them is definitely cost. And obviously one of them, the big one is risk, as you brought up. So human errors, inconsistency, increased risk without automation. So typos, gaps, missing steps and processes. This is where attackers find things. They start doing some reconnaissance, saying, guess what? Someone forgot to disable a particular port. You get access to something. Timeliness. How quickly can we do things? How quickly can we remove access when someone leaves? How quickly can we change access when it's no longer required? And the other thing I like to look at is scale. It might be okay for me to manually process 50 requests a day, but something will come up where I have to process 5,000. How can I possibly scale to do that? And that again increases risk. And as you mentioned, the likelihood of a breach. If we're 70% of all breaches are identity related, then all of that happens, and that goes in factors into the priority. And so if I think of just generally an IAM program, and cybersecurity in general, and generally is if it was a superhero, inconsistency would be the villain. And what automation does in identity ensures that things are consistent and repeatable, whether it's not forgetting access to privileged data, addressing things like human fatigue, making sure those are consistent, efficiency at scale, as I brought up earlier, and even things like addressing technical debt. I mean, the mainframes are supposed to be gone a long time ago, but they're still there, and how we go ahead and automate some of those. And those are the reasons why cybersecurity IAM automation should be part of the identity and access or cybersecurity program.
Yep. No, well said, right? I mean, if you will see any of the organization, I was reading one of the big journal, not calling out the name here, but they call out that out of two organizations, if you will see their IM transformation journey, the second one is still immature and require a lot of to do. And they call out the industry like healthcare. They are still in transformation, and they are struggling with a lot of legacy technology. And if you are putting all the legacy technology and assets in automation phase, it's take a lot of time. And Susan, why don't you share if how you see the clients and from the Microsoft perspective, this automation need and the requirement to the organization in the current era?
Of course. So I just wanted to add as well, identity in the enterprise, it is the weak spot. It is what people need to secure. The hackers out there are looking to make lateral movements. So what I used to call it was no user object left behind. You need a process to efficiently onboard and offboard user objects. You don't want to leave your organization exposed. So in comes automation. To reduce human error. Nobody goes to work and says, "I want to make a mistake today," but those happen. So when you introduce, tool sets, third-party tool sets, it's only going to make your job easier and more efficient as well. The hybrid identities, it's the new norm. It's the work from anywhere. People could be in a coffee shop. People could be, at their cottage. So you need to make sure that those identities are created consistently across your organization. Multi-cloud is prevalent. You've got people working in, Microsoft Cloud, Google Cloud, AWS Cloud, all day, every day. So you need these automation tools to manage that sprawl. Another one from an administrative perspective that I could think of would be, again, what we call permission sprawl. Users that have access to varying systems that are disjointed. And if you don't have that central tool to manage and monitor your automation sprawl, it's not sustainable, really. That's really my big message is, tools where possible, protect your identities, don't leave any user objects behind. That's kind of my take on it.
No, so identity is no more related to the user access, right? We just don't talk about user identity rather than now we talk about digital identity where it's include everything. Either you talk about machine, device, end user, or I mean, you just call out and then we say that, okay, what is your identity to prove and validate? And adding up the cloud, and now we are talking about on-prem, we are talking about SaaS environment, and now since the data, which we say the fuel, which is flowing in SaaS, that is another complex or cumbersome to handle it, right? How you are going to validate the identity into the SaaS environment. Thanks God, now we are talking about zero trust and too many things and bringing the blockchain into the identity. But if we'll I still restrict myself, and I would like to understand from expert opinion from you guys. Um, I have seen my clients working, right? Having whole identity is structured around enterprise identity or customer identity or privilege identity, and too many nuances around, right? How you are going to, which one you are going to take first, how you decide that what you need to deal. Uh, and that is where we say that if your strategy and the planning is not right, your identity is not going to be fixed. You will not fix your identity right? So, Marco, how you deal
Yeah.
considering the strategy and planning, and you will advise to others that where they should start and what should be the right planning considering the stakeholder within the end client?
That's a great question. So when I think of automation, some people want to go right in to do it. I just want to go in and automate. And I think the problem starts because we're automating bad processes and complex technologies. And let's just automate what we have today. And we need to be careful that you're not automating bad processes and potentially creating additional technical debt that you can't get out of later. So we really have to do is step back. So complex technologies, I can have, say, for example, 400, 4,000 servers out there with local IDs and I have automation building it. And all of a sudden, machines are created, they're removed. How do I manage that change? Really, what you need to do is establish an identity foundation. Like, you want to have centralized authentication, centralized IDP, authorization? Do you want to send, like, how do you want to build that pattern? First of all, how do you want to build the processes so they make sense? So we now have an opportunity at this point in time. So the sad part is you're not diving right into automation. Initially, you step back a bit, and what's the best way to do that? So my recommendation is you do start off by building a IAM foundation design pattern architecture around provisioning, authentication, and that includes all of it from MFA to adaptive to attribute-based authorization as well. Think of those. I would also recommend that once you build the processes and you build the foundation, use APIs first. Be careful not to jump on the RPA bandwagon, the robotic programming automation. It's a great thing. It gets implemented very quickly, but you need to be careful that you're not creating additional technical debt. You can be, it really is a person. I call it like the last stop before you go manual. It just replaces the person. Use an API if you can. To me, that's the best thing you can do. Make sure that your solutions are financially sound. Does it really make sense to automate a system that has 2 or 3 users on it, like spending all that money? And another thing I think about, and this actually looks more at the strategy, is anybody thinking about building truly identity microservices, right? It's a little bit underdeveloped. The idea of, can you be more adaptable, nimble? I don't want to abuse the word agile, but if you can build a true autonomous, disposable microservice to actually do things, these are things you could be looking at. That's more strategic. But that's the advice I give people: to establish a foundation, review your processes, use APIs. That's the way I would recommend you continue, or you begin your automation journey.
Now, that is what even we are seeing, right? You are not going to have one application integrate with the IDM or IGA tool where you have just one user who is going to be accessing
Yeah,
it. Right?
yeah.
And just to add up, right? We have, like we say it, right? You do as much as you need it. If you will go and, like you said, that you cannot hop on and say that, hey, all the things I want to go and automate it, right? There are impact overall where it's include the cost, it's include the efforts, and maybe by the time you will be going and doing the automation, maybe things will change down the line in 6 months. Are you going back and starting again? So definitely the organization are thinking across. But within the SaaS environment, primarily in cloud, if you are talking about identity, Susan, what will be your advice to the organization if they need to strategize or plan to have the identity right within that?
So I just want to piggyback again on that one. So it's doing a baseline. Do the tools that you have still make sense? If you've always done it a certain way, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the way to do it in the future. That to me is really key in moving organizations forward. Benchmarking your tool sets, do they still make sense? Um, if they don't make sense, look for ways to consolidate. If you have too many technologies for your administrative staff to be using, that's where human error comes in. Making a change in one system has a ripple effect in another. So it's about rationalizing your tool sets. The other suggestion I would have is don't make your technology complex for your end users. Um, if you've automated the system so much for your security controls and your access controls and your compliance controls, users are going to find a way around it. They just want to come in and do their job, and they don't want to be hindered by technology. So really making sure that identity is key, and it works for your user community.
Yep. And we are seeing that cloud adoption, right? Either whatever the reason is, either the cost effectiveness or reducing the infrastructure cost or maintenance overhead to the client, it's growing, right? But what we have been seeing across the globe because of the privacy laws, which are day by day is growing, a lot of governance and regulations based on to the reasons and verticals. If I'm talking about domain or vertical, either you talk about the financial organization or healthcare or retail sectors, everyone is having some different regulation and governance. Marco, what are the impact, if you will see, for these regulations or cloud adoptions onto the IEM program, if any organization is going to take up?
Yeah, so the way I think of it, I mean, is the cloud is both cool and scary at the same time. And privacy is becoming a bigger and bigger thing. I mean, GDPR kind of started, but it seems to be growing and growing. We have to make sure that as we scale into the cloud, and I think we really should focus on the cloud because I mean, the cloud's been it's here, so it's part of the journey, but that's where we're kind of exposing a lot of things. So we really have to make sure we secure what we have. When it comes to zero trust, we want to make sure that only the right things are allowed. We want to make sure we have the right flows in place. And I'm thinking from an automation perspective, within cloud, I think we have to start with a DevOps team. This is the way I see it, and I don't have a huge industry experience, but I think if we can start off the DevOps, control or have oversight over the DevOps team and what they can do, establish gold images, establish automation to automatically secure privileged accounts, establish automation to onboard accesses right away, establishing external identities, things like that. Enable some cloud embedded products, like whether you want to use SASE models or secrets management or logging, but also do things like I think enhanced monitoring is things you need. If you find overprivileged accounts, automatically remediate those types of things. If you have exposed services, automatically, shut them down, because that's sort of where we are. And that's from my perspective on this pause.
Just
Yeah,
just to add up, Marco, right? Because
sure.
it belongs to the industry where there are a lot of regulations, right?
Mhm.
And one of our audience is having the similar question coming since we are discussing. I wanted to take it up that if we are going to automate identity governance, how you are going to do that to meet various compliance requirement if you have it?
Okay,
I can take that one if you
Yeah,
like.
go ahead.
sure.
Sure, go ahead,
Yeah,
Susan.
sure. So data residency, that's a big one for us at Microsoft. If located in US, data must reside in US. If data resides in Canada, and so on. Many organizations have that. So how do you automate that to meet compliance requirements. I'm going to be selfish here for a minute, and I'm just going to talk from a Microsoft perspective. We can do data retention. One of the things that I've learned as a previous customer, was keep data for as long as you need to. Don't fall into that trap of keeping everything forever. Your automation tools can't sustain that. Look to your regulations to understand. Work closely with your HR systems. Look closely with your legal systems. IT and security. It's not just IT anymore. It encompasses all of the pillars of your business. So you need to make sure that you have understanding and buy-in from all of your pillars. And then just one final note on that would be declare a source of truth. And when I say that, I mean for your identities. A lot of organizations are picking HRM systems as their source of authority, but you need one, and you can only have one, and you need to stick with one. You can't use your HRM system, but then declare that your local Active Directory is the source of truth. One needs to feed the other and be maintained.
Yeah.
That's really my feedback on that question.
No, thanks, Susan. So, like we say, right, automation, yes, that is a program which every organization is going to take up, but there are different catalysts, right? That what enable it, why you are going to have those automation program, how much you are going to have it, right? And maybe we'll come back onto those questions down the line, but compliance requirement is one of the catalysts for the IAM program. If you are going to have the IZA in the organization, you may have whatever the regulation, either you are talking about SOX or you are talking about PCI or you are talking about CPNI or either even the GDPR, right? Or what compliance that organization is under purview of. That become a catalyst. And once you define your automation roadmap or automation program, you make sure that that is taken care of, right? You are just not going to define your IAM automation roadmap in silo, right? So just to add up onto how we see the different organization or the clients are taking up the IGA automation before defining anything forward. My favorite question always, right? Every IAM products, and not to call out, right, to make sanity in place. Everybody talks zero trust, right? Buy me, have me, I will give you the zero trust, right? Again, is it a framework? Is it a concept, or it's a real technology solution? Can one product provide the zero trust to the organization? Again, these are the things we would like to hear from you, that how the zero trust framework, again, I always call it a framework because it's required multi-tenant solutions, right? To take any organization near to zero trust. I don't know even if anybody can achieve zero trust, right? And it's a larger discussion. But for an organization, right? If an organization is defining IAM automation program, what is the impact of the zero trust? Where you say, right, that you verify everything, but you don't trust anything, right? What is the impact of it? Just listening, right? And like to hear from you, Marco and Susan,
Sure.
that how do you see that?
I'm happy to take the first one. Sure. So when I think of, when it comes to zero trust, outside of authenticating every transaction, segmenting networks and all of that, putting that outside and looking at it specifically from an automation perspective. When it comes to, I think a lot about, the artificial intelligence and RPA. How do we make sure we trust them? Because they are automation and they can go rogue like people. So how do we make sure that they behave the way we expect them to behave in a zero trust environment? How do we authenticate them? They can go rogue. So do they report to someone? Does someone have to grant them access? Do they onboard them? Do they monitor their behavior? Do they terminate them if they're doing something bad? And those same type of principles need to be applied to these types of applications. When you have even bots, bots are great and they're powerful, the RPA bots, Where are their IDs and passwords, and how do they authenticate? Do we trust them all the time when they're doing? Do we really believe it's a bot or someone that's actually taken a bot's credentials? We have MFA applied to a bot. How do they authenticate? These are things we got to think about. Watch the behavior, limit their access, control where they can go, and like leverage secrets and make sure that they're certificate based. You can't. You have to treat the automation part in a zero trust environment around machine identity quite different than you would people identity.
Yeah. No, Susan, any thought on it?
Yeah, I just want to say, when you talk RPA, consistency is key. You really want to make sure that everything is streamlined and secured. When I think zero trust, I'm with you. I think it's a methodology or a framework, and really my message for zero trust and IAM is start somewhere. Don't try to boil the ocean with your what Microsoft defines. We've got pillars, and on our far left we declare identities and endpoints to the far left, and data and network and security to the right. Start somewhere, even if it is just doing things like access reviews, making some human accountable for a final decision, whether or not your automation is secure and safe. That's really my message there, and take sensors and big data. These are buzzwords in the industry right now. Everybody has big data on their mind. We are taking in so much data and information about everybody and everything. Um, Make sure that you can automate that to parse your data and surface your relevant information when it comes to identity and access management.
No, well said, well said. Once there being some time, right, that everybody is just speaking a word and talking, and sometimes it's just become a selling point rather than it's a real concept to elaborate, right? And that is what we always say is, to our clients and to whom we talk, that yes, everything is all right, but understand what is a use case for you, where you are starting, right? Like Susan, you said that you have to start somewhere, but to start somewhere, you need to make sure that you assess yourself, that where you want to start and where you want to go. Until unless you have that frame defined, it's very tough to define any automation framework or any automation program, because you need to track, you need to assess, right? Because there must be some defined KPIs, right? Because like Marco, you if you will be going to your executives asking for funding, right? Hey, I need to do this. Definitely, there are some defined methods that you will be presenting to them.
Mm-hmm.
So let's suppose if you are talking about IEM program automation, Marco, what should be the organization leadership looking from the KPI, or we say that ROI, to
Mm-hmm.
focus as a tracking down the line?
Well, that's a great question. So I do believe if you talk about the KRIs, the risk, that's more subjective. So although you can do it, there'll be a lot of scrutiny from the people that are looking for budget. So the KPIs are really where you have to look. And so if you have, let's just say you have a whole bunch of manual work items, look at how many of those manual work items you've been able to automate. If you have 500, you automated 250. How much time that saved, that immediately equates to dollars. And that equates to efficiencies and equates to resources being allocated to do different things. So there's many values. And so I would look at it from that, right? From the KPI, the risk side of it, you want to add that to the business case, but I believe that is a byproduct of everything you're doing to help enhance the business case, but truly around the performance, the key performance indicators.
Yeah. So we are just left with a minute. And I would say that there is a question, and I will park my question and I will take this question. And the question is, if you are talking about IoT and 5G, what is the impact onto the current IEM practices of this? If any one of you want to take that.
I look at it specifically at the identities. Again, this is part of my first point where there's an accelerated rate of identities, and we really have to establish guardrails within the cloud to give people enough movement. Say, here are the rules that I'm applying, and people can't go outside the guardrails. I think I'm limited time, but that's what I would look at. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. No, thank you. Thank you, Marco and Susan, for short, sweet, and very advisable discussion. Like we know, IM is not a small to talk within 30 minutes, but I hope this helped and this will help to the audience. Thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.